three. Got it! Howard searches. Lobs to Parker with 4. Parker spins, heaves, and got it! With half a second to go, Cheyenne Parker ties the game.
He doesn't shoot threes.
Riding to the basket, Gray. Gonna shoot the ball here. Carrington heaves it, and that's it. For the first time since 2019, the Atlanta Dream beat the Connecticut Sun.
This is Rafi Guzon, and you are tuned in to Nothing But That Sports Talk. Get you in the game.
Yeah, Connecticut did lose to the Atlanta Dream, but don't worry about it. They're off to a good start. As I welcome to this episode of Nothing But That Sports Talk, I'm Rafi Guzon, alongside the guy who actually did commentary for that among many Connecticut Sun games for the past few years, Brandon Glasheen. You've heard him do commentary for the Connecticut Sun, working with the likes of Juliana, Ice Young, Tarika Foster-Bursby, Monica McNutt. Now you can hear him on this episode. Welcome aboard.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun working with some really talented women on these broadcasts. It's been a lot of fun. And yeah, you're right. You know, it was a tough loss for the Sun Thursday, but overall 8-3, new coach, new offensive system, some players. They've shuffled the deck a bit. Can't really complain. They're off to a pretty good start.
Exactly. And you know what? And while we're on the subject, I mean, what are your overall thoughts on the way this Connecticut Suns come together, even after losing Jocko Jones in free agency?
Yeah, pretty good. I think they've still got a really strong core. I think their core principles on the defensive end are still in place. Brianna Jones got a core contract, is still ascending. One of the best bigs going in the league with Fowles retired now. I think Brianna Jones has stepped into the limelight as being one of the best old school bigs that the league still has. Had a dynamite performance against Atlanta. Got off to a really sharp start, has been the team's leading scorer in consecutive games. So staying out of foul trouble is a key for her. DeWanna Bonner explodes for 41 last week against the reigning champs. That was a big moment to kind of remind everybody, okay, like Connecticut's for real. They're still in the mix here, despite the super team chatter in the offseason. But the pieces, I think, fit. The pieces fit. The production from the guard position offensively has been dismal the last couple of games. I think the team would tell you that. You know, Natisha Heidemann got a little banged up in that last game, guarding the other team's best player. They've asked a lot of Natisha Heidemann now defensively. So now it's, okay, you're in year 5. You're going to be asked to guard really good guards from the other team. Now, can you still provide that spark, that shooting touch offensively on the same night? And that's a challenge, I think, for Natisha, that she's still working through. Ty Harris has been a nice addition. Tiffany Hayes has dealt with some foul trouble too lately, but fits into what they have, I think, on both ends of the floor. So it's a really good mix. Two of their 3 losses are to New York and to Vegas. So I think you've got to play close to a perfect game against those teams when we get to end of August, early September, and eventually you want to get to October when you're in the finals. That's the goal for every team, right? So, but I think the middle of the league, the bottom-ish middle part of the league, your Atlanta's, Indiana, Dallas, Washington, Chicago, those teams that are hovering around 500, despite all of the roster turnover and the player mobility this past offseason, I think the league is, I don't think it's necessarily balanced yet, because I still think there's some teams that are like in a different category. Vegas, I think New York will figure it out. They're going to be fine. Connecticut's up there. I think Washington will be there, but their offense has been underperforming to this point. But I think now the middle tier of the league is a lot better than it was in previous years. So my point is there are no nights off. And coaches would say that in years past too, Rafiq, but I think now more than ever in the WNBA with 12 teams, 140, 145 best players in the world playing, every game is winnable, I think, for any team. That's what we're finding out.
Exactly. I mean, come on. No disrespect, but you just watched the Connecticut Sun lose to the Atlanta Dream team, and then that dream they're really starting to ascend as a team that's going to be in the hunt for like in the middle of the pack playoff spot. with Ryan Howard. You saw how good Cheyenne Parker is. I mean, you saw that Atlanta Dream coming together. Then not too long before that, well, obviously, at the very least, you were able to get a split with the Las Vegas Aces you were breathing down your neck 2 days before. DeWanna Bonner had that phenomenal 40-plus point performance, and she's to remind you that Connecticut's not team to be sleeping on. And let's not forget that they almost made it to WNBA Finals when Jarquel Jones was on the roster, but she sit out during that COVID year. So it's not like as if Connecticut was going to lose a beat. And you're being coached by Stephanie White, somebody who knows a little thing or two about coaching a team to a WNBA Finals. So there's that.
Yep, for sure. I think folks slept on the Sun, though, coming in, that they could get it figured out as fast as they've had. And when they hired Stephanie, Jonquel Jones was still on the roster. I think folks forget that. Like, they hired their coach, and Darius Taylor was hired a week after they hired Stephanie. Darius Taylor was coaching in Atlanta. And now as a GM, full-time GM of the Sun, I think they had a plan with JJ, then they moved JJ, and I think the pieces they got back, now you look at that deal, you get Tiffany Hayes, which was the first-round pick they flipped in the JJ trade to Atlanta. You get Hayes, Beck Allen, who had a big night against Vegas the first game, 6 3-pointers, tied her career high. And I think Ty Harris is a really viable guard that has a bright future in the W. And they liked her so much, they gave her an extension before the season even got underway. So, Stephanie White each game goes by and it stands out more and wins, of course. But the fact that Stephanie White was out of the league or out of coaching for a year stuns me, that no other team. Now, that could also be said that Stephanie was waiting for the perfect opportunity. I think she was attracted to a winning situation, a chance to win a championship, a core that was already in place. So you don't have to really build a culture that was already established. It was more so making tweaks to a very viable team. So I think you're onto it. They are they're no longer under the radar. They're in the mix.
Exactly. And it's all thanks to DeWanna Bonner, who's averaging about 17 points. You got Brianna Jones, as you just talked about, averaging about 16 points. Alyssa Thomas, who's averaging about almost 15 points. So, and not to mention DJ Carrington's finally getting some more minutes, something that she somewhat got when Jonquel Jones was there. And then you add Rebecca Allen, who's literally one of the last players of the New York Liberty during her days in the Garden before being involved in the Jonquel Jones trade. When you put all that together, do you see them playing like a lot better than they are right now, or are they going to stay as they are?
No, I think they're only going to get better. I don't think you want to be. It's funny you say that, because we did our broadcast Thursday. 10 games in is the quarter mark of the season. It's a 40-game season. 10 games is a quarter of the way through. And what team, and even Vegas, who is 9-1, what team would want to say they're playing their best right now? Because at the end of the day, you want to be better than you are right now, right? So I think that they're only going to get better. They're still figuring out their rotations. Tijanay Carrington had an off-season surgery, did not play much at AU over the winter because of an injury, so she was kind of slow getting back into it. Beck Allen, what she's come back from is amazing. Collapsed lung, broken ribs, didn't play in the fall. Pretty incredible how she's looked coming back. And then Tiffany Hayes had knee injuries in Atlanta. And that's not to mention Jonquel Jones, Alyssa Thomas, what she's had to go through to get back on the court. So health is a big factor for a lot of these teams. And we're seeing it already play a part in this season. Connecticut's been lucky. They haven't had to miss any of their players in any games yet this season. But injuries are huge. When you only carry 11, 12 players, you've got to stay healthy. So I think, no, they can still get to another level. I think, though, what is true, when you play those top tier teams, you've got to play close to a perfect game, because they're stars, they're core players, particularly Bonner and Alyssa Thomas. They are on not the back nine. I think DB, it's fair to say, back nine, year 14, could still give you a night that she had against Vegas, make no mistake. But their window, they've got a window here. That's for sure. They had a window with JJ and Courtney Williams. They've got a window now still here. So, but that's why you have to have depth, and the bench matters. So your Beck Allens, Ty Harris, Carrington, Heideman's got to be better offensively. So they've got enough pieces that can carry them through a 40-game season. And then, of course, you want to be playing your best at the end.
Exactly. Now, to piggyback what you said about competing with these super teams, like Do you think if the playoffs started right now, do you think if they run into the Las Vegas Aces or the New York Liberty, do you think that they're good enough to beat them?
Yes.
And why?
Yes, because I think continuity. We found this, and we're going to talk about the Nuggets a little bit. The Nuggets just won the NBA championship. Continuity matters, I think, and with that being said, I think the player mobility aspect, and not just player mobility, but star mobility, was evident this past offseason. It's going to take some time for New York. We know JJ was kind of dealing with something coming in injury-wise. They've managed her minutes. JJ is still trying to figure it out where she fits in with Breanna Stewart. And look, I know everyone brought this up in the offseason before the season started. Well, JJ, Stewie, Vandersloot, they all played together overseas. Well, timeout. It's different in the WNBA when you're playing just better talent night in, night out, every single night, every single game. So I don't think that equates. Like, you can dominate overseas and you're on a dominant team. You can stand out and be a well-oiled machine. With New York, they didn't have Ionescu. So you brought it up. Atlanta, 2 huge wins. You beat New York on the road. You beat Connecticut on the road. Cheyenne Parker had said it. She had never beat Connecticut on the road in her career. She's in year 9. That's pretty incredible. So it's going to take some time. I do think Connecticut has enough depth and enough. I think their shooting has been subpar to this point. I don't think they need to be a 3-point shooting team, but they need to make threes. Timely threes matter in big games. And I don't think they've even scratched the surface yet as to what they can be. And I still think Breanna Jones is a matchup problem night in, night out, and can guard on the other end too, can guard the other team's best player. We saw what Atlanta did defensively to Breanna Stewart on Tuesday. Stewie was held to 1 of 14 shooting. If you've got a post player that can match up and you can take Stewie out of a game, you're very viable. Now, the other question about Vegas, Vegas is very good. They are very, very good.
Well,
Jackie Young.
You see what they did to the Seattle Storm?
Yeah, they didn't start well. They didn't start well in that game.
Well, you had to do. Yeah, obviously you didn't see much because you had to cover your game. But I mean, at least from the highlight perspective,
caught the back end, and they didn't start great in that game. But they can do that. Like they look. I'm not saying that Becky Hammon does not want this, but they are so good that they can take a quarter off. They can be off for a half and still be down 10. And we saw this against Atlanta, pushed them around a little bit. Indiana nearly got them. Kelsey Mitchell had a layup to, I think, take the lead or tie the game a couple weekends back. They can be had on a given night, but Vegas, it's going to be hard to beat Vegas or blow them out or anything. And the fact Connecticut did it was impressive. I think Becky Hammon was happy to come out of there with a split, but the Sun came out hungry in that first quarter, first half against Vegas. In the second game head-to-head. But as long, I think any team that wants to knock off those top-tier teams, if you bring it defense, this is why I think Washington's still going to be in the mix. They are so good defensively that defense, I know it's cliche, defense wins championships, but if you can bring your defense and you have core principles defensively and you're sharp and you're connected on defense. Now, can you win a 5-game series in a conference final or a semifinal or a final? Because that's what it requires. You got to beat a team 3 times out of 5. That's what we're asking right now in June, looking down the road. But that's the question you asked. Yes, I think defensively, if you bring it, I would not be surprised if one of those super teams is not in. I would not be surprised if one of those super teams is not in the finals. I'd be shocked if Vegas didn't get in. I think New York is the team that can be had. And I know everyone says like, 40-game season, it's still early. Well, early becomes not early very quickly because like I said, we're already 10 games, 11 games into the season. Pretty soon it's going to be 20. Then you're halfway through. And if Ionescu missed a game the other night, JJ still hasn't figured it out. So there's still plenty of time. I understand that. You play a lot of games in the WNBA. You don't get much practice time. You play every other night, most nights, every 2 nights. So you're not getting to the gym practicing. And as we all know, training camp is really dumbed down in the sense that you come from overseas, you get a couple weeks, and that's really it. You play a couple of preseason games, and then you're in the fire. You're in the thick of it. And I don't making adjustments on the fly during an all-star break. You can, I guess, hit the reset button, but I think it's really hard in the WNBA to just kind of flip a switch and figure it out. So I do think, though, if you are good enough defensive, that's why I think if Deladon's healthy, Shakira Austin's having a great year. And like I said, I think the first round, and this is thinking way ahead now, but the first round of these playoffs, I'm already talking about the playoffs, but I think the first round is going to be very, very intriguing. And I think there's going to be some opportunities for some of these teams to make it very compelling. I do.
Exactly. And the WNBA is more unpredictable than we thought. But at the same time, just like and I listened to what your colleague, Juliana, who's doing a phenomenal job being an analyst at both the Connecticut Sun and the New York Liberty, by the way. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know how she found the time to do it, but being an established broadcaster that she is, it's no surprise for that. So I got to give her flowers. I just watched her do commentary for the Atlantic 10 tournament that I covered earlier this year. She's doing a phenomenal job, and I'm glad you finally got a chance to work with her during the season.
Yeah, Julianne did a couple of I think she did one game of ours last year. We've had Andrea Carter, who does a great job covering the college game. Andrea was in for the Vegas series. Mm-hmm. Tarika has done, and Tarika's a big name in covering the W nationally, and does the Around the Rim pod with LaChina Robinson. Tarika's a blast to work with. I love Tarika. Tarika's been doing some analysis for our road games. We've been doing our road games out of the studio this year. We're not traveling this year. We're doing the games remotely like a lot of teams do. But Tarika's been doing our road games, and Tarika as an analyst has shined. She's doing great. Been very lucky to work with some really talented, sharp trailblazers of the game.
Yeah, exactly. And to stay back on topic, it's no surprise in the way the standing is structured right now. I mean, Connecticut, they found a way to. I thought to myself, Connecticut, they're going to find a way to be a top 4 team at least. Even with the off-season change-ups with that the Aces and the Liberty had, they're going to find a way to be a top 4 team, and the Washington Mystics too. And I can't sleep on the Dallas Wings; they're breathing down their neck, and the Indiana Fever, they're coming. The Fever, they're coming. I mean, I know you had your game to cover, but I also know that you somewhat followed what the Indiana Fever did this past week, where they blew the Washington Mystics to smithereens, and they pulled off a near win in Chicago. So, what are your overall thoughts on the Indiana Fever? Do you think they're going to have a much better year?
Oh, yes. I mean, Aaliyah Boston is already an unbelievable talent. WNBA made body, fits in perfectly. I brought up Brianna Jones. I think Aaliyah Boston is in that old school sort of category that just fits right into what the league is in terms of being a dominant post player. Comes from a great culture. Shout out Dawn Staley, the product she's churned out the last half decade and then some down in Columbia, South Carolina. The ready-made pros, giving Gino Auriemma a run for his money in what he's done over the years in Storrs, Connecticut. So yeah, it doesn't, in one breath, I say the middle tier. So your teams that are like in the 10-5 range, meaning playoff positioning or in the standings, they're much better. I still think at the end of the day, experience and having been there before will prevail in terms of getting that home court first round series. So your Vegas, Connecticut, I do think Washington will still be in the mix. I do. I think they've just got too much experience on that team. And New York, even though they're different pieces, they've got enough winning players. Stewie won championships. Vandersloot's won a championship. Jonquel Jones, MVP, has been to finals. Sabrina Ionescu has played in big games. And that's the other thing. All these players, like Sabrina hasn't won anything yet in the W, but has played in big games at the college level. All these South Carolina players coming out, UConn players, they've played in big games. So yeah, I think, and as I say, the bottom of the league is catching up. So I think, as you brought up Indiana, I love Christy Sides. I love what she's brought to the table for that team. Kelsey Mitchell has fully bought in. I'm happy for Kelsey Mitchell, one of the most underrated stars in the league. Did not make the All-Star game last year. Was one of the big snubs to not make the All-Star game. Has been terrific. It's been a breath of fresh air. They look happy on the court, which is something we couldn't say last year, year before. It looked very broken. So they've done a really good job. Their GM, has done a great job fixing the culture, and it's early, but Nalissa Smith, Aaliyah Boston, when you have some lottery picks and when you hit on your lottery picks and they can play and they play together, and that's what Aaliyah does. Aaliyah plays together. Aaliyah doesn't need 20 touches to impact a game. It was great against the Sun. They didn't win the game, but they made that game really close. Aaliyah Boston hit a 3 at the top of the key, hit a putback after a Nalissa Smith missed 3 to potentially take the lead, I think. No, I love what Indiana's doing. And you got to it's proof too that you got to give your draft picks some time. It takes a little time to build a culture, and that's why continuity matters. We're seeing it with Vegas. They're going to keep that group together with Candace now in the mix, I realize, but they're going to try their best to keep that group together. Connecticut's kept a core together while they've made tweaks. New York is building it now, but their talent cannot be overlooked. And you look at Washington, they've got players that have been there half decade now. They've been there since they won that title in 19. And then everyone else, it's kind of a new mix. Dallas, what Satu Sabali's been doing with Arike being the great talent she is. Natasha Howard's a winner. So I think, as I say, that the middle of the league is better in catching up, I still think at the end of the day, just in terms of seeding, those top teams, that's why it doesn't surprise me. Connecticut being a top 4 team in the league, I was like, that take it to the bank. I didn't think it was going to be any question they'd be in there because they're just so much further ahead culture-wise than those other teams that are trending upward.
Exactly. But either way, it's going to be a fun last few months of the WNBA regular season. And and you know what? We're not that far away from the WNBA All-Star game taking place in Las Vegas. Why don't you give me your starting 5 for the WNBA All-Star game? And I'm talking about players that you would like to see based on position to make it.
Oh, geez, you're putting me on the spot here. Let's see. I think, the obvious ones, Jackie Young's going to get in the game the year she's had. Asia Wilson for sure. So that's a guard. That's a big. So if I pick 2 center or 2 forwards and 3 guards, or 3 forwards and 2 guards, I want to look back now at the latest voting. I know the voting, Connecticut. If you're listening, Connecticut fans, get out and vote. Alyssa Thomas was 17th in voting. Bonner, 18th in voting overall. That's got to change. Let me see here. Let me pull up my votes here. Stand by. Give me a minute. Let me find this. I just had an email up with voting. Because I know what I'll do is if I start giving you names, I'll forget somebody. Here we go. So let's start this way. We'll go 2 bigs, and I'll try to make it so it's 1 for each side. They could obviously very well be teammates in the game, depending on how it all shakes out. Wilson and Stewart are your 2 obvious forwards for sure. There's 2 out of the 10. There's a chance Aaliyah Boston starts in the All-Star game. That's how great she's been. Jackie Young. So I'll give you 10 names. How's that? I'll give you 10. And I think when I come to 10, I think the positions will work themselves out. Wilson, Stewart, Young. Then it gets really hard because I think there's a lot of really good players.
There's a lot of great talent in the WNBA. I don't blame you.
Kalia Copper's going to get in what she's done in Chicago. I did not see coming what Chicago's done. And that's I clearly disrespected them. I thought with all of their pieces out, I thought they were going to undergo a real culture shift. Nope. James Wade and Kalia Copper, they are leading that ship in the right direction. Kalia Copper to me is a starter in the All-Star game. I would like to think, I hope that Kalia Copper emerges as a starter in the All-Star games. There's 4. Copper's got to be in there. Now I think Diana Taurasi is going to get in because of her history in the league. I think Brittany Griner is going to be in the mix for sure. So there's probably 5 and 6. And I'll come on here and do. I know our Tarika, who we both know, mutual friend of your show, and you and Alyssa Thomas should be in the All-Star game as a starter. Alyssa Thomas should be a starter. She's averaging close to a triple-double. Leads the league in double-doubles. Yeah, second in the league in assists.
WNBA Finals last year, or somewhere in the playoffs, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. Most comeback player of the year, coming back from the Achilles. So there's 7. Alyssa Thomas should be in the game. I know I'm missing a few more Vegas players. I know you could start. I mean, you could take Vegas, their starting 5, and then pick 5 All-Stars. So you could go Parker, Wilson, Plum, Gray, Young, and then play someone else, and that would be a game. That's how good they are. If I had to pick,
or you could put all 4 players of the New York Liberty on the All-Star game. That's how good. It's pretty much. It could be pretty much Aces versus Liberty in the All-Star game. Let's put it like that.
Yeah. So to stay on it here, I'm writing this down now because I know if I don't write it down, I'll forget someone. So let's see. I think Brittany Griner has actually had a really good year. They're not winning a lot of games right now in Phoenix. They're still trying to get, and there's a whole lot going on. I realize that with Phoenix and what's been going on off the court, especially. Never mind the fact that Brittany Griner, the fact that she's playing at this level a whole year removed from the league is pretty incredible. I think Griner gets in as a forward. Wilson, Stewie, there's 2 forwards on the other side. And then guards, Jackie Young, Kalia Copper. I don't know, like, I think Ionescu, the injury is, I'm factoring in an injury. This is very early, of course. The starters won't be announced for another week. I think a week from Sunday is when the starters would be announced. It's amazing how we're already talking about All-Star game, and we're this far along in the season.
Season goes by very fast, my guy.
It does. I think because of the fan vote and what she means to the league, Taurasi will be in. So I've got 7 names listed right now. Then it gets really tough. Now, just going off voting, Aaliyah Boston could very well be in. Satu Sabali has been phenomenal. I would vote Sabali to be a starter the way she's played. So I've got 8 names. I would probably lean Chelsea Gray to be in it over Kelsey Plum. Gray has shot the ball better. Plum really started slow, shooting the ball from 3 this season. And I'm not saying that's all Kelsey brings to the table. But I think, and she's been very good defensively, Kelsey Plum for Vegas. So I would probably lean Chelsea Gray, and then again, factoring in the votes, the league votes, probably Arike. So I think you can form some sort of starting 5 for both of these teams. Wilson, Stewie, Thomas, Griner are your 4 bigs. Alyssa Thomas is who I'm talking about. And then some form of guards. I would go. So here we go. I think I've got it here. And Sabali can kind of play on the wing, kind of a small forward, power, very interchangeable player. A lot of these players are. So I think if I had to whittle it down, and also want to shout out, because I know this is what's going to happen. I'm going to leave someone out, and someone's going to get mad. Like, Deladon's been phenomenal. Like, great to see Deladon back. I know Deladon had to miss a game recently against Seattle, but Deladon's given it a whole go for the season. So if I had to guess, so factoring in who I think should play and how it will play out, so I'm trying to be accurate and give my take. Your 4 bigs, maybe 5, because I think Sabali could go either way. Asia Wilson, Brianna Stewart, Alyssa Thomas, Brittany Griner are my 4 bigs. And then guard / small forward, your wings, Jackie Young, Kalia Copper, Diana Taurasi, Satu Sabali, Chelsea Gray, Arike Gumbawale. That's what I think that's what I think's going to happen.
Yeah, you got an interesting point. Even though you left out Jewel Lloyd from the Seattle Storm, even though
I know.
Even though the Storm are not going to be good this year, but don't worry, they're probably just losing on purpose, because you know what WNBA draft's coming next year. You know what's coming.
Well, Minnesota's not having a great year either, so they could be in the mix too.
And you left out Nafisa Collier too, but it's understandable.
Colliers been very good.
Great. Because those teams are not great, but don't worry, that they're not going to be bad for long, because Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark are going to be coming into the league next
Beckers,
year. Paige Beckers, who knows what those girls are going to bring into the WNBA. But sticking with the presents.
Real quick, hold on, because now you got me thinking about this. So if I had to guess, so like if I'm going to make that case about Griner and Taurasi, they're stars. They're well-known stars in the league. That's why I think they will get in. And I think that's good for the league to have your notable long-term stars, your sustained stars, I think Kalia Copper should be a starter. So that's like kind of my wild card that I don't think many people would go, you're going to start Kalia Copper over Jewel Lloyd or over Sabrina Ionescu. I think what Copper's done for that team has been incredible. I left out no mention of the Aguma case in LA. LA's been good. I think LA's been an underrated team.
Yeah, say Kurt Miller's doing a good job coaching that team.
Not surprised. Not surprised at all.
There.
Alicia, I haven't said anyone about Atlanta is 4-5 now. They just beat New York and Connecticut. Alicia Gray just dropped 27, a career high. Alicia Gray. So, and then the other one too. So this is where this is on the side of what I think will happen as opposed to what I think should happen. Aaliyah Boston could very well be a starter as a rookie. Ryan Howard was an all-star last year and won Rookie of the Year. So I think Boston gets in. I don't know. She could be a starter based on fan vote alone. And Boston has changed the culture there. So I think Kelsey Mitchell's dynamite. Nalissa Smith is very good. Boston and Christy Sides. But Boston has set a culture there. So if I had to sub somebody out based on what I think will happen, I wouldn't be shocked if Aaliyah Boston is starting over Alyssa Thomas, even though my Connecticut bias, yeah, boom. Wilson, Stewart, Alyssa Thomas, Brittany Griner, Sabali, kind of be forward guard. What do they list her as here? Really quickly. Sabali is a front court player. Okay, front court. And then my guards. So there you go. I gave you 5 forwards, 5 guards. My 5 guards would be Jackie Young, Chelsea Gray. And Gray's a controversial one because someone would argue exactly what you said. Well, Jewel Lloyd's putting up better numbers. True. So Gray might get in. I think Gray should get in, but Sabrina might start. But if I had to do it, because that was a question, if I had to make it, it would be Young, Copper, Taurasi, even though I don't think Taurasi's had a great year, still putting up great numbers at age 40 or 41. I can't keep track anymore. But I think Taurasi will get in as a starter. And then Chelsea Gray and Arike. That's what I got for you. That's what I think is going to happen.
Yeah, that's true. But if you ask me, I'm probably gonna pick Big 5. I mean, if it ends up going down to team Breanna Stewart, I'm probably going to put her forward along with Asia Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
And then small forward position, I'll give it to Alyssa Thomas. We already talked about how good she is. In the guard positions, I'm just going to give it to Arike Gubawawi and Sabrina Ionescu. That's the starting 5 for that side. So, yeah, for Team Wilson, of course, Kansas Parker. Those are two bigs. I'm proud.
I don't know if Candace has put up enough numbers to make it. I don't think. I don't know. I don't think so.
Parker's been kind of slow. Yeah, she really has been kind of slow.
Candace is fitting a role that they need her. Like Candace looked at that team and said, "I just need to go in there and impact the game on defense," and that's exactly what she's done. Still blocking shots, getting steals, guarding other bigs. So great matchup player against Connecticut. Will be a great matchup player for if they face New York, and they will face New York in the regular season. If they meet in the playoffs, New York can be matched up. They can throw different looks at Stewie, and Candace is a great passer, excellent passer. That's why Candace has won everywhere she's gone. She doesn't have a problem being the second option offensively or the third option. She did that in Chicago. Everyone on Chicago, when they won the title in 2021, everybody was a great passer in that starting 5. But I just don't think Candace, I mean, it's not so disrespect. I just think Candace has been phased out.
Parker, I'm probably going to give it to Jonquil Jones, assuming that she steps up offensively, as I already talked about in my last episode. And I'm in the 2 guards for that side, I'm probably going to give it to Kalia Copper, and I'm kind of blanking. Kalia Copper, and I'm probably going to give it to Jewel Lloyd. So yeah, okay. Those are my starting 5 for those sides. I mean, somehow Jewel Lloyd has to sneak in. I know the Seattle Storm's horrific this year, but somehow she has to be in the All-Star game, even if this is a bench warmer.
Well, everyone will play. So I think Jewel Lloyd's going to get in. I don't think – look, JJ's got a lot – I don't know if JJ's going to get in. Rafiq. She's got a lot.
Yeah, she does have a lot of room for improvement. You know what? I already talked
about in the minutes, she's not playing a lot of minutes, and they're still trying to figure out how to use her. So
they're too offensive. Yeah, they're too offensive dependent on Sabrina Stewart on Brianna Stewart. That has to change. Brianna Stewart is having an off night, and my co-host went to that game earlier this week, and they lost.
Yeah,
when she's not there or not doing much, the team offense does tend to struggle. We saw that in the losses they did have. So.
Yeah. I think there are going to be some new faces in this game. I was telling someone this the other day. Of the 12 teams in the league, I think only 2 out of the 12 didn't change their coach and their best player. Only 2. Vegas, I think their best player is Asia Wilson, but someone could be their best player any given night. Becky Hammond's back year 2. And the only other team that didn't change anything in terms of their best player and their coach is Atlanta. Every other team, and Tanisha Wright, and I think Ryan Howard, Alicia Gray, you could argue Alicia Gray is their best player. Howard is only in year 2. Gray's been in the league now 5 years. Howard's very good. Gray's been excellent, plays on both ends at a high level. So that's an argument. So if that, and Atlanta's like, I'm being generous with the Atlanta one. So my point is, of the other 11 in the league, so take Atlanta out, every team in the league besides Vegas, their best player or their coach changed. Now, I know what some are thinking.
You also got James Wade. He didn't change Kalia Copper's still there.
Well, okay, but I would argue that I think Candace was their best player last year, not Kalia.
That is
in terms of like their
let's not forget the year that no disrespect, but let's not forget the year they won it all in 2021. Kalia Copper was
Finals MVP,
not Kansas Parker. She may fit the go-ahead shot, but Kalia Copper was carrying that championship team.
That's fair.
Buzzsaw.
That's fair. That's a good call out. That's fair. I know what others. That's a good one. I didn't actually consider that. The other one I know like the Deladon factor in Washington. Well, you don't. The last couple of years, it's been the Deladon Mystics and the non-Deladon Mystics. They've been 2 different regimes. Connecticut, right, changed their coach. Jonquel Jones, MVP, gone. So the coach changed. Dallas, new coach. Washington also changed their coach, I may add. Los Angeles, new coach. Phoenix didn't have Brittany Griner last year. Same coach, but Brittany Griner's back. Seattle, it's Jewel Lloyd's team now, not Stewie. Stewie's gone. New York, all new.
Minnesota Lynx. Sylvia Fowles retired.
Lynx, Collier.
But Sherelle Reeves still there, and Lafisa Collier's still there. So
right, but they had Sylvia. So I think now it's a lot of what we're seeing now. My overall point is a lot of passing of the torch now with the new young wave of stars. So yes, Kalia Copper was the Finals MVP. Chelsea Gray was a Finals MVP. I think though culturally, I think that was still a Candace team. Like it was. You follow me? So. With the voting now, I think the voting for All-Star is way more challenging than years past because of all the it's a new face of the organization in a lot of places, whether it's your coach or it's your best player. So that's why I think this is really hard. And when you've got 2 teams like New York and Vegas that have all the stars, it's very challenging to come up with a fair starting 5. And like you said, like, even if Jewel Lloyd isn't a starter, she'll get in and she'll play a ton of minutes. So you still got to get the coach votes and you still got to get other player votes. So what we're going off of in voting is just fan vote right now.
So that's also true. And I know I'm supposed to ask this question to start the show, but I kind of waited till the end because I started off the show by I started off the show by talking about the Connecticut Sun, and you obviously did commentary for the last game against Atlanta Dream. But now I'm getting ready to ask this. Why don't you tell me how you got your career as a broadcast journalist started?
Yeah, it goes way back. I mean, now it's like that's a loaded one. I went to Syracuse for broadcasting. I was there for 4 years, graduated in 2015. When I graduated, I did some minor league baseball in the middle of nowhere in New York. I went down to South Carolina, so I was doing baseball. And then I in the off seasons, the non-baseball, I went home to Massachusetts. I did some stuff at colleges. So Holy Cross, Boston College, University of New Hampshire, was doing a lot of college games, basketball, football, hockey, soccer, lacrosse, and kind of just got reps doing games for different schools. So I would go and do a game here, a game there, and I would just build my own schedule, balancing out as many games as I could pick up per season. In a lot of cases with the schools is they just say, hey, you know, you can come on and join our rotation of 8 to 10 announcers and get games here and there. Some cases I would do color, other cases I would do play-by-play, but it was a way to get just exposure and reps doing games. And then you put together, you know, a little reel and you're sending out your stuff, and then one thing turns into the other. My start with the Connecticut Sun, it's my third year. My first season was 2021. As we know, we had a pandemic in 2020, or a pandemic that started in 2020, and there was the bubble season down in Florida. And Bob Husler had done the games for Connecticut for a decade and a half. And long story short, I did a lot of lacrosse. I did a lot of indoor lacrosse with the National Lacrosse League, and that connects because the New England Black Wolves used to be an organization in the NLL. They played their games out of the Mohegan Sun in Connecticut. And the folks that ran ticketing, marketing, their whole staff directory behind the scenes with the Black Wolves also ran the Connecticut Sun. And I knew Bob had been there at the time. So in 2000, I think my first year with the Black Wolves was in 2018-19. And Amber Cox, who now works for the Dallas Wings and the Panther City Lacrosse Club, they're also in the NLL. So Amber, similar role that she had in Connecticut. Amber was in Connecticut at the time when I was working for the lacrosse team. And I always said to Amber in passing, hey, if anything ever comes up with the Sun, I'd love to be considered. Help out, fill in, that kind of thing. No situation. Like, I wasn't trying to replace or take someone's job. It was always like, hey, if something ever opens up, I'd love to be considered. That was it. Lacrosse team in New England in the winter of 2021, the team got sold to Albany. So I found out that the NLL didn't have a season in 2021. They because a lot of guys play in Canada with visas, with COVID, and Canada had it way more. They were way more locked down in Canada. So a lot of guys couldn't travel from Canada to the States. So we didn't have a season in 2021. I found out in February of 2021 that the Black Wolves were going to be sold. We weren't going to have a team in New England anymore. No team in Mohegan. So that whole thing was gone. Legit, a month later, I find out from some folks that I worked with the Black Wolves that still work for the Sun, that Bob was going to retire. Bob Husler was retiring, was no longer going to do the Sun. And they said to me, like, hey, like, you should throw your name in the mix. Like, you never know. You do plenty of basketball. I had done college women's, men's for the colleges I listed off a minute ago. And I was like, that's not a bad idea. So my name was in the hat. I interviewed with some people and I got the job, the Connecticut job, in March of 2021. And that was my first year. And every year has been different because my first year, we were still coming back from COVID. We were only doing home games. We were calling the games from the concourse. Like, we were courtside. We were up in the concourse because you had distancing and all that jazz. So, and we only did the home games. So I ended up doing, I think, 16, because the season was only 32 games. So I did 14, 15 games my first year with the Sun. And it was a great year. JJ won MVP. They had the number 1 seed, and they came up short. They lost to Chicago in the semis. 2022, we traveled. They put us on the road. Us and Vegas were the only teams that traveled for road games. So I ended up doing last year, I did 30-something games. Of the 36 they played, they expanded the season from 32 to 36 games. And now this year, we're still doing every game, but we're not traveling. They cut back on the travel. So we're doing every game now, home games at the Mohegan, and we're also doing the road games at Mohegan out of the studio. So every year has been a little different. It's been a lot of fun. Enjoyed it. So that was how I got my start with the Sun, was being in lacrosse, which is what people are like, that's interesting. But a lot of cases, a lot of these pro teams, especially seasonal teams and teams that don't have a full year-round schedule, a lot of these operations, they're responsible for two teams. Like that's what I mean by Dallas. The Dallas Wings are owned by the same people that own the lacrosse team. A lot of cases in the W, you've got like Minnesota, they operate out of an NBA building. The Sparks operate out of an NBA setup. So Liberty, Nets, Liberty with Joe Tsai. So yeah, that's how I got my start with the Sun, and I've had a blast.
Exactly. And you know what? I watched a clip that Tarika Foster-Bresky uploaded where she did like a little day in the life of how she prepared for every Connecticut Sun game. And I watched this to decide where you commentate the road games. And let's just say the way you guys did the broadcast, as even though you were still in Connecticut, was just amazing.
Appreciate that. Yeah, it's challenging. Like, I mean, I've done some remote shows before. It's never the same. As an announcer, you want to be on site. You can see everything. You can feel the crowd. You can pick up on stuff that you wouldn't see on a TV like we're doing right now. I mean, you can't. It's not the same. You might see a player that goes down the tunnel because of an injury or body language, just stuff you can't pick up on. If a timeout is called, if there's a coach's challenge, which is now installed in the league. So little things like that, little nuances, the little tendencies that you can't pick up on when you're remote. So you do the best you can. You see it on the monitor and you call it. And they've been fun. It's been good. It's been very good. And I love Tarika. Working with Tarika has been a blast. Tarika and I, we have a very similar sense of humor. We like to have fun, and I think you have to, especially when you're calling. I find it very enjoyable to call, especially in the W, because when we're the home broadcast, here's the irony in being when you're at home. Example, Thursday, we did Atlanta, Connecticut. We're the feed that gets picked up on Prime Video or NBA TV or CBS Sports Network or ESPN3. So there's almost more of a responsibility when you're doing the home broadcast. When you're when your team's home, when you're calling the game, you've got to kind of call it more down the middle because you know most of the people watching on the Prime Video or the NBA TV or the CBS Sports, they're tuning into you. So like just fans of the league. When the team's on the road, you can actually be more Sun heavy because most people that are watching your broadcast are just people that are local. So you actually find that very interesting. You'd think more on the road, you'd be like, I don't know, like you'd think, well, what I should say is you would think when you're at home, you can be a little bit more of a homer and more of like a kinetic. It's the opposite. When we're at home, you realize your audience is bigger. And when they clip up stuff on the WNBA Twitter, even the teams that are visiting, when they go and clip highlights, the social media teams, they're getting highlights from your broadcast, not the road team's broadcast. So the home games are you get a little more jacked up because I think you know that the audience is not just because in theory, Rafiq, Connecticut fans are going to Connecticut games. So when you're broadcasting, the fans that would tune into you on the road are actually at home because the team's on the road. But when the team is at home, your audience is actually more of just the WNBA, which I think is really important because the league is still growing. It's only 12 teams. The league's only been going down now for almost 30 years, which is not a lot of time.
27, actually.
27. There you go. So, like, point being is there hasn't been – the league is still very, very, very young. If folks haven't watched, and I think they brought this up on that new movie, the Air movie, that features Michael Jordan and the shoe deal with Nike. Like the NBA Finals were on tape delay in the 1980s. So the league is still growing, the WNBA. It's still a very young league for being 27 years old. It's still very, very young. So there's a responsibility when we're the home broadcast to hype up the road team and do right by the league. I'm a big proponent of that.
Exactly. And you know what? You mentioned something about calling the game like as if the home game, whatever. When I'm watching the broadcast, when I watch you do the games at CBS Sports Network or Prime Video, I mean, technically, you still. It don't even feel as though you're calling the game like down the middle, and you're not favoring the Connecticut Sun sometimes because Even when the road team has a big moment, you're literally still giving like the same noise response as you would have if you was calling the game as NBC Sports Boston.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that I appreciate that. That's good. I mean, I forgot Ion is another thing. Ion games, we have a Friday night Ion slate. Ion games are going to be staffed by home local announcers. So that's another situation. When you have an Ion game and you're the team hosting the Ion game, you're broadcasting to not just your team, but just WNBA fans in general. Like I hope we get to a point 30 years down the road where there are 25 to 30 WNBA teams. And when you do a home broadcast, you can get away with being more home. And the reason why you can, like if you tune into if I tune into a Celtics game on NBC Sports Boston, I know I'm getting probably a former Celtics player or two, and you're tuned in to the Celtics. When you call a Sun game at Mohegan Sun, it's not just the Sun. You're calling a game for the league because the league is too young to just start playing favorites. We're not there yet. And I find that as a broadcaster, I enjoy that because at the end of the day, when I do a game, I want to see a great game. And luckily for us with the Sun, the only exception would be when they blew Vegas out in that second game. Every game we've had has been close. Like that Atlanta game the other night, some were up 10 at halftime. I'm thinking, oh, they might run away with this. But Atlanta, they don't stop. They're young. They're feisty. And they made that a game. So when Cheyenne Parker hits that jumper to tie it, you got to bring that energy. That was a big time shot, half a second left, forces overtime. It was a great moment. But in the back of your head, you're thinking like, hey, there's an audience here, not just watching to watch the Sun. We've got people watching the league and watching Atlanta, but people that like the league. So you got to do right. I think it's huge. You got to do right by the league too, to get to promote the product and give the product the right attention across the board.
Exactly. And you know what? I kind of get the same thing because I shared the story with many other broadcasters that came on this platform. I mean, I've done play-by-play demos for Fordham University, where I got my master's degree, and I kind of get a sense of what. And I kind of got some critique on like I had to make sure I'm calling it as Fordham University, even though I'm doing the demo version, I had to call it as the home team for Fordham because that's the home team that they broadcast WNBA sports. WNBA sports is the home for WNBA Fordham games, like literally across the campus. So I had to call it like that. So. And I had times where when I'm asked this question because I had times when I do demos, I either start a little bit or I shout a lot more than I'm supposed to for certain plays. So what was your struggles that you had when you started doing play-by-play demos on your way towards broadcasting success?
I honestly had the same approach. Like, for example, when I was doing if I did like a New Hampshire men's or women's basketball game and we were on ESPN3, well, we knew we were broadcasting the game. In all likelihood, it was a conference game. So say it was New Hampshire against Albany. Well, we knew people that were tuning in were also watching just basketball in general, college basketball fans. But we tried to call it, and it's a very, you got to walk a fine line because like in the back of your head, all right, well, the school that you're calling the game for is paying you, but you're also like, you have a responsibility to just call the game like it is. So I honestly, I feel like I never struggled with that. Like I never had to worry about being a homer because if you want to be a broadcaster, you want to see a great game and you want to call the game like the game is. And if the team you work for has a bad day, give the other team their credit. Like for example, Thursday, we gave Atlanta their love. They deserved it. They played better. They made shots. They got some stops when they had to. Connecticut and the Sun have been great about that. The Sun, like how we call it. And luckily, like this is something that's worth mentioning. Like since I've been doing games with Connecticut, they've been very, very good. They don't lose a lot. So that's something too. Like I can't even imagine if you were calling games for Indiana the last couple of years, Atlanta before they won 14 games last year. It's hard. It's hard because when you're the home broadcaster, you're like, oh, you got to be very careful with how you don't want to talk down your team too much or beat them up if they're having a bad night.
Yeah,
but I just think at the end of the day, you just got to bring energy. You got to bring energy no matter what. on each play, and you amp it up a little bit when there's a big moment. And like I said, you give the other team their due. If the other team makes a great play, everyone knows at home it was a great play, whether it was the home team or the away team. So that's how I look at it. Like you gotta call the game for what the game is. At the end of the day, when you put the headset on and the ball gets tipped, it's a basketball game. It's a baseball game. It's a football game. It's a game. It's a game. And you got to call it like you see it. So, because we all do this prep and all these numbers and charts, and you get all these information and all that. You need it. That's important. At the end of the day, you only end up using like 15 to 20% of the info you prep, because because the game is the story and the game is the game. And you got to call it's a game. You got to call the game, not call what you want to talk about. It's not, now what we're doing right now is a talk show. It is a talk radio podcast format where you can go into whatever, but a game, live events, you got to call the event for what the event is.
Me. I kind of got an idea about that when I was doing demos at Fordham University. And even though I never really got to do it on the broadcast, I still got some hands-on experience and know what it's like to do play-by-play for a college basketball team. It's just the way it is. I mean, yeah, it's tough landing a job in play-by-play, but you have to be consistent in building your craft, because you go from stuttering a lot to stuttering a lot less. And I also learned that broadcast, that's play-by-play is a lot different, because you don't have to describe as much. When you're doing radio broadcast, you have to describe where the player is when he or she is launching the shot, and where is the player's positioned at when he's making a pass. Yes, and
Rafi, I got
right up and down the court.
Yeah, it's 7:00. I got a couple more minutes because I got to get rolling here. So I'm not sure if you want to hit on anything else before we go.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's fine, but let's just say it's really bringing to the conversation. It really has. All right. Now onto some quick talk. Onto some quick sports talks, real quick. Thoughts on the Nuggets win the championship?
Yeah, kind of what we talked about with the WNBA. I think continuity matters, and they were patient. And I heard someone brought this up. Someone brought this up on a national radio show today, and it's such a great point. Like Denver, when you're not a big market like a Boston, a New York, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, like you can almost hide yourself. Like that. Jokic is phenomenal, best player in the game. I think him and Giannis, it's 1A, 1B. I think those are two guys you want to start your team with. Jokic does everything so well at such a high level. We talked about Candace Parker being a great passing big. I think Jokic is that. What he does, he's not a ball stopper. Ball always moves. He's moving with a purpose, even though people give him a hard time for his pictures way back in the day. And he's a moving locomotive that makes excellent plays on and off the ball. Murray, happy for Jamal Murray. His story was out of the playoffs the last couple of years with injury. He was excellent in the bubble. Folks forget how good he was in the bubble, but then he ran into a healthy LeBron, a healthy Anthony Davis in the bubble Western Conference Finals. Denver can be good for a while as long as they keep those two together. But it proves being patient with your stars and giving it some time. And I'm trying to keep that in mind when I think about these guys in Boston with Brown and Tatum. People lose their minds when Jaylen Brown has a bad game 7, and the Celtics probably should never have been down 3-0, but it reminds you like, hey, like getting the stars, drafting well is the hard obstacle to hop over. Then it's, okay, we got our guys. Let's put the right pieces around them. Let's go get Michael Porter. Let's go get Aaron Gordon, Contavious Caldwell-Pope, Bruce Brown. Put the right pieces around your stars to play how you want to play. And then you kind of try to build some continuity. Mike Malone I didn't realize this. Mike Malone had been there 8 years. Some of their exits the last couple of seasons, if he was a coach in New York, they're calling for his head. They're going on talk radio that Monday or Tuesday after the weekend and saying, get this guy out of here. Like he doesn't get it. Like Budenholzer just lost his job in Milwaukee. He won the championship a couple years ago. It's amazing the shelf life of coaches, but I think the Denver Nuggets winning it is great for the league because it reminds you, you don't have to be in a big market. You don't need to, this cracks me up every year. Well, the NBA, they want the Lakers and when it was Celtics, Miami and Denver, LA, all I heard was, well, the league wants LA and Boston. No, like the Lakers won the bubble championship. They haven't won before that. They had not won since the Kobe team with Pau Gasol. What's that?
Kobe Bryant, God rest his soul.
God rest his soul, yes. R.I.P. Kobe. Celtics have won one title in 35 years. Like, so no, the league doesn't. I think the league would like it, but look what's going on in football. You think the NFL looks at it and says, "Yeah, we really need Kansas City to be the premier for no." Like, it just, they drafted well. They got the quarterback right. They've put the pieces around the quarterback. They're paying who they should pay, interchangeable parts, and they've got a coach that's really good. So Denver winning it, short term, Jokic amazing, long term, good for the league. It proves that if you're patient and you get the right stars, you got to get the stars right. That's a thing for sure. You got to give it some time, and you got to be patient, because as we found out, and Michael Jordan did this, Kobe, LeBron, the best of the best, takes them 7-8 years in the league to finally get there, to win the title. Giannis took him 9 years in the league to win a title, so it takes some time. Steph Curry, almost a decade in the league, then he won his first title. Continuity is very important, and that's why, look, again, short-term, WNBA, kind of making the W parallel. These super teams, more so in New York, all new pieces. It's great. I get it. Buzz, league needs buzz, ratings. I'm going to tune in. I want to watch how they play. The New York Liberty remind me a lot of what the Miami Heat were when they first got LeBron, Wade, and Bosh. Do the pieces fit? How much time is it going to take? Remember, that Miami team, they were in the finals. They lost to Dallas in 2011. But they were like 8-9, 9-8 to start the year, hovering around 500. They were still trying to figure out. Chris Bosh had to sacrifice a ton. D Wade said, "All right, this is kind of LeBron's show now." That takes a lot of buy-in, and I think that's what we're going to see now going forward. Is continuity in team sports matters a lot.
And now wrap up this episode, Nothing But That Sports Talk. Thank you for stopping by, Brandon Glasheen. I'm sorry I left out the work in the NHL, but you probably already touched that briefly earlier in the show anyway. So
no problem. Yeah, NLL is great. I think it's a good product.
Yeah, looking forward to coming back to the show later in the season at some point. So yeah,
would love to.
So all the balls out there, including the Connecticut Sun and the Boston Celtics, get your head in the game.